politically or socio-politically, however you want to think about it, socio-economically, things are really starting to become more stable and pleasant by the mid-2020s, 2025, something like that.
Okay.
But our long-range data, I don't know how accurate it is. We'll find out when we get there.
When we get there, yeah, if we're still here.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try and fire through these questions kind of quickly here.
Sure.
From Sting, could you please ask if Clif is familiar with the predictions of Jose Arguelles and the idea of the 2012 circumpolar rainbow bridge? Is that how you pronounce that? Circumpolar?
Yes, I am familiar with that. There's a lot of underlying assumptions in there that I don't necessarily agree on. I think he's a very astute observer and has some great insight, but I dispute some of the conclusions, that's all.
Okay, scanning the sites here. Question from Baron Cross. Gary, can you please ask Clif what he thinks about Patrick Gerald's work about rising water, and how does he think it's going to get? How high should we relocate if we have to?
I don't know that we have to. I think that Patrick Gerald is incorrect. He's inaccurate about that. His mechanisms for that occurring will not happen. So the worst you're going to face with is the theoretical maximum of a tsunami, which is about 30 or 40 meters maximum height, about 120 feet. Excuse me. And that'll depend on the landform that generates that. However, if you were living in the back end of a fjord, at the very narrow point, water might theoretically rise 400 or 500 feet at that small specific location. But if you're in any non-coastal area, I wouldn't worry about it. Patrick Gerald's concerns for how the Earth reacts I find to be not supportable because his basic assumptions are not accurate and they reflect a plate tectonic theory understanding of the planet which is not accurate. So the Earth won't react that way. If anything, we'll actually have a situation of less water in the ocean, so to speak, because the planetary landmass would grow. A situation of that can be explained. Let's say that the rift in Africa, which is now, 600 or so kilometers long, and in some cases is kilometers wide, and who knows how deep it is, and it's got volcanism involved, say that tore all the way to the Red Sea. Well, the thing is large enough that it is the functional volume of a good portion of the Red Sea, so we would initially see a big portion of the Red Sea drain away, and we'd have a lot of land exposed there, and that would also work its way out into the Gulf of Aden and the Gulf of Oman, and eventually even India would see some level of reduction of seawater. And of course, eventually, it would affect the whole planet, although it takes a long time to work its way around. Mm-hmm. But if we had the same thing occur here in the U.S., say that we had a very catastrophic growth incident, and we had a real big splitting that ripped open the Gulf of California even as far as into the Salton Sea area. We might, on the West Coast, see our water levels up here in Pacific Northwest within weeks drop down to where you could not, for instance, work the ferries because they couldn't land at the ferry docks. Even though we're really only dealing with a 3 or 4 foot drop in water, it would be permanent. And that's the kind of thing that actually is much more likely to occur than Patrick Gerald's big waves coming over the planet.
Yeah. Another question from Phil, dare I say it, P. I hope that's how you pronounce it. What is Cliff's explanation for the Carolina bays?
Oh, it is in South Carolina and those bays. There is local scrubbing events, and we do have those incidences where we have a flat rise from a coastal shelf on an eastern coast that has indeed been inundated by very large displacement waves. Now, displacement waves are not the same thing as tsunamis. And so, for instance, a displacement wave has only a local effect. That's like a local mountain coming down in Hawaii and sending out a displacement wave. That's not the same thing as a tsunami. A displacement wave dissipates as it goes through the water, and so would have the kind of effects we see in the Carolina bays. But it's not ubiquitous around the planet. That undoubtedly was the result of a seamount or something shedding a very large proportion of its volume, causing the displacement wave that sculpted out that area.
Okay. Another question. The questions are just flying in.
Sure, sure. And I've got some really good maps, by the way. If you go out online these days, you can find all kinds of good hydroscape maps from the United States Navy, from all different kinds of undersea exploration areas that show how all of this stuff is all related. And if you want to look at the whole area of the Carolinas and the eastern seaboard, or any of the seaboards, you can look at what's close to you and what you're going to have to face. So if I, for instance, was living in Los Angeles, it would be really important for me to go and look at the undersea contours that are around from the Gulf of California all the way over through to, say, Catalina Island, because those are the local conditions that will cause the water to behave untowardly in my area. And so you could also reassure yourself, nope, no probability of waves here. If anything, the water levels are going to go down, that kind of a deal. That's not good because of for instance, we won't be able to land ships at ports, that kind of a deal, right? So it will have a huge impact on us, but it won't be quite the same as a big wave coming and picking you up and depositing you in London, that sort of a deal.
Sure. We've got to start drawing close to the questions here, because they're just flying in thick and fast. Another wee handful here for you.
Sure.
Alien Wars. Serpents versus dragons.
That's a bit odd, and it may relate to constellations more than actual, snaky guys fighting dragon fellows. Instead, it may be, the constellation Draconius versus the Serpent, for all we know. But those were the archetypes that we have. I suspect we'll find out a lot more in October when that really starts manifesting.
Okay. I'm trying to fire through these as quick as I can. Earthquake in Japan that we've touched on, gold as a new currency, and the increase in end time prophecy. Is it all related, and if so, how?
I don't know about end time prophecy. As I say, the whole most religions, by the way, or let me put it this way, the faith-based religions have a disproportionately high percentage of their energy focused into prophecy. I find that to be engineered. So I don't really put much credence into all this end time prophecy because time does not end. It changes. And so in that sense, the Eschaton from Terence McKenna is not the end of time. It is the end of something, but not necessarily time per se. So the way the end time prophecies come on up and they say this is going to occur and that's going to occur and so on, especially the Christian ones, I find to be highly manipulated and suspect anymore. And then what really irritates me is that these faith-based religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, approach everything in morality from the viewpoint of the master and the slave. And I won't buy into that. Therefore, I have a tendency to disregard all of it from that point forward.
Okay. A question coming in from Carol there. Is there going to be a need for mass population movement due to Earth events?
Yes, and we're seeing it now. It's unfolding. The Japanese are already starting to flee Japan. And I suspect that it will become even worse as the planet grows and we fracture. Various areas may, it's theoretically possible for a whole new country that we'll call Cascadia to form here on the west coast of the United States as California flakes off. It won't go into the sea. It'll become its own standing island, so to speak. That's the kind of mechanisms we're going to have to deal with. And I suspect that that's going to move a whole lot of people fairly quickly.
Okay, another few questions, then we'll need to wrap up. Can Clif tell us if we're living in a holographic world or in a computer simulation?
I wouldn't put it a computer simulation, no. Holographic has a specific set of meanings that are not necessarily true. I mean, because holographic implies that if I were to take up a piece of sand and shine a particular amount of energy through it, I could recreate the whole planet from that piece of sand. And whereas that might be theoretically possible, it's not a practicality with that chunk of sand. So I don't expect that hologram is an accurate description. I do think we're in an energetic construct. And actually, the way I actually look at it personally is that we're gloves inside glove boxes. Glove box is this thing that the is literally a box that is sealed on all sides, but it's got these holes in it, and the holes have gloves attached, so you can go in and stick your hands into the gloves that are inside the box, and you can manipulate the things that are inside the box without your hands ever touching them. And you can pull your hands out, and if there's even a nasty thing in the box, it won't ever affect them because you're dealing through the gloves themselves. So I think of all humans and all life in this planet as we're inside a glove box, and we're sort of like the gloves. So really that's the mental construct I use to sort of sort things out. That it's not really meaningful in that sense because we are not the gloves per se. We're the things that are sticking our hands into the gloves. So my consciousness is out in the larger world, and I'm merely the material representation, or the glove, if you will, that my consciousness is affecting itself in the material world, using to affect the material world.
Yeah. Okay, last question coming up, Cliff.
Sure.
And this relates to dead sardines in San Francisco Bay. Have you got any thoughts on this?
Sure. Actually, it's the magnetics and the energy again, and I suspect that's also going to the idea that we're going to have a very large earthquake here on the West Coast. And I've had an incident out here where I ran into dead birds along the side of the road up here in the Northwest, and I suspect very much that the same growth pulses that caused the earthquake in Japan and the ripping of the Banda Aceh and the tsunami there and the tsunami in Japan, those same growth impulses on the planet are now affecting the North American continent as they work their way around. And yes, indeed, I suspect that those are part and parcel, and the die-off is magnetic and just yet more indicators of solar Earth interaction at a level that's going to be intruding on humans. Just something we have to, live through.
Mm-hmm. Now, we try and focus on solutions, Cliff. Is there any solutions at all that you can offer for?
Sure, you got to work from your center outwards to affect the larger planet. Change yourself first. Each of the problems we have, it can be altered if we alter who's at the top.
Absolutely. It's tweaks to the system.
We've got to be sovereign to do it.
Absolutely, definitely. It's the way ahead. It's the way forward. The future's bright. The future's sovereign. You know what I mean? It's the way we've got to approach things. We are the people, and only the people can change things that's happening. We can't, obviously change the planet, the way the planet operates, but we can certainly change what happens on it.
And how we react to that.
Yes. Cliff, thank you very much for coming on to TNS Radio.
Sure.
I hope you've enjoyed.
Glad to do it. No problem.
I hope you've enjoyed your time here again. It's been an absolute blast for myself. Sorry about the technical problems, but as yourself, we were getting cracked.
Yes. It wasn't our particular doing.
It wasn't our doing at all. So,
it's
guys,
we beasties, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Folks, I'm sorry if I never got to your questions. I can't be everywhere all the time looking at everything, so apologies for that. I tried to get through as many of your questions as I could, and take it easy. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll be back with you next Monday. Until then, stay safe, stay sovereign. Good night. God bless.